Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness. The bomb cyclone just trying to keep our show down. How dare it? But I thought I would turn on my Christmas tree lights, although it's not decorated, just to give everyone a little boost of the holiday spirit. And then Lucky, you see your little ear move? Lucky's just going to hang out with us today. Our apologies about having to cancel the live show. The reality is, like, 400,000 people are out of power. Our studio is near Bellevue. We haven't had power in 2 days, and we got an estimation of 8:23 at 8 p or 11:23 at 8 p.m. for restoration. So we were really hoping that they would get it back on before the show today, but there are so many people without power. I went and stopped by the studio yesterday just to check in on everything, make sure everything was all right. And there was a massive tree down right by our studio. Like, it sits on the corner, and it's a beautiful freaking tree. So I was so disappointed, but it's like split. It's like it went in every direction. It was just wild. And then I know there was one death that happened. I hope you're at least warm and well fed. We just got power back. I would have done this yesterday, but we didn't have power, internet, phone, nothing at our house until about 8 a.m. this morning. So I was like, all right, we got power at our house. We'll do a live Q&A in lieu of the regular show. There's a ton of news going on, a ton to talk about. If you've never joined us for a live Q&A, because these are usually just for subscribers, our wonderful subscribers, we do one a month. Just drop your questions or comments into any of the platforms. Nicole's on the stream today, and she'll get them in the show sheet for me to go over. But because we don't have a show today, I wanted to just touch on a few things that are happening in the news. The Matt Gaetz thing, I told you so. Did I not tell you so? That Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his name from consideration to be Attorney General, basically said he feels as if it's become a distraction to the Trump administration. I never think they intended for him to be Attorney General. I really don't. I think it was either a court false flag, where it was like they knew they were going to make a bunch of controversial picks, so they picked one that was really controversial just to distract everyone while they get the other ones done. I just really think that's it, because he was on Capitol Hill yesterday with JD Vance, going Senate office to Senate office and meeting with people, Democrats and Republicans. And then last night he was on the news saying, oh, the meetings went great. I feel like the nomination's going to go great and all of this. And then today he's like, I'm removing my name from consideration. So I had some questions actually already in the live chat about what that means for his congressional seat, because you'll remember that he immediately resigned his seat in Congress because he said he expected to be confirmed as Attorney General. So my understanding of it, I was Chad Pergram with Fox News, who's just like an expert on all things congressional rulemaking and all of that. The way he put it, and he would know far more about how the process goes than I would, he said that basically Matt Gaetz resigned his position in the current Congress, which ends like in a month and a half. But he was just reelected to serve in the next Congress. So it sounds like all he has to do is just tell them, never mind, I'm going to be in Congress next year. So that sounds like that's perfectly fine. And that's why I think it was all just a little mind game, because he knew the timing of it was done in a way where he can still keep his congressional seat. I don't know what they're going to do with that whole investigation into whether he had sex with minors or whatever it is. But it's just all wild. All right, I'll get to some questions on here. Matt Gilbert had a really good one. He said, good afternoon, Brandi. That's so formal for you, Matt. Good afternoon, Brandi. Good afternoon to you. I'm feeling burned out with Keep Up the Fight in Washington, and how do we find the right balance between giving up and being involved? Well, there is certainly a balance between giving up and being involved. I mean, there is a lot of space between those two things, and it's okay to take a break. Like, honestly, it's okay to take a break and to unplug for a little bit. I can't do it because, this is my job. But we just went through a really, really emotionally draining, depressing, in some instances, election cycle. And if you just need a little time unplugged, that's perfectly fine. Like, we'll welcome you back with open arms when you're ready to come back to the show and to join us. So I think that's part of it. But look, so I have because we're not doing live shows, I am working on a couple written pieces to put out, one of them this evening, that has to do with all the ways in which the Democratic Party in our state undermined democracy and undermined the will of voters, while they simultaneously tried to convince everyone that it's the party out of power that's the real threat to democracy. And one of the things I write about is the need to put the old media on notice that they either have to fix themselves or we're going to unplug from them entirely. I really believe that that's part of what you can do. I'm sure you guys all consume some sort of old media besides whatever independent platforms like ours that you're a part of. And that's fine. I mean, look at the storm as an example. I mean, there's a place for old media, right? I'm not out chasing storms. If that's not what we do. I'm not a breaking news show. There are major stations that can stay on the air in a situation like this and be out covering things, and that's good. They need to be doing that. But where they're falling short is the hold the powerful accountable aspect of it. Just as an example, with the ban on natural gas, when lawmakers try to sneak it through at 2 a.m., and of course the initiative that's the only one that passed is to protect our right to natural gas. Look where people would be without natural gas. Literally, there were more than 500,000 people at one point out of power. And if you looked at the PSC outage map, it was like solid red. I've never seen anything like it in all my 15 years doing news here. So imagine if we were in a position where natural gas was banned. I mean, at our house, we had hot water. We had, our gas stove to be able to cook food. We had a gas generator and all those things. So we had some natural gas elements where we were able to get by and would have been able to get by for a few days. So it's unconscionable with the state of our electrical grid. And that should be a major focus of the mainstream media coverage. I mean, obviously, you have to be out there covering the emergency aspect of it. But they have enough reporters to be able to also hold the powerful people accountable who wanted to put us in an even worse situation than we would have been in otherwise, and who are going to still try to do that because Governor Insley is suing to invalidate the initiative. I think one of the things you can do, and again, I'll post this piece later on tonight, but it's really a call to action to say we have to each individually do our best to hold old media accountable or to unplug from them entirely, because them suffering financially is the only thing that's going to fix this. And I do believe one of the reasons, Matt, to your question, that Washington State was like on this island of not going as far to the right as other places like California and New York is our media is worse here. It just is. I told this to a group the other day and I got all these sighs in the room, but I'm like, it is. I follow reporters elsewhere in the country who seem willing, like in California, to ask hard questions of the people in power, like Gavin Newsom. Here, they just acquiesce. And so it's a matter of literally, it comes down to big gestures and small gestures. Unsubscribing. Like, no, I'm not going to subscribe to the Seattle Times if they're not willing to put one Republican, one genuine conservative on their editorial board, or have one conservative columnist. If they're not willing to do that, I'm not subscribing to the Seattle Times. So that's like more of a major gesture, right? But small gestures like, no, I'm not going to click on that King 5 article. No, I'm not going to click on that King 5 video, because clicks translate to revenue. Subscriptions translate to revenue. Ratings translate to revenue. So we have to start stripping them of that. And if money's not coming in at some point, they have to reevaluate, hopefully, what they're doing. So Matt, I think that's, and again, I'll post that piece tonight, but that's a good place to start, is just, if we don't fix this media situation, and we're not the answer on an island, we can't fix it on our own. We need to be able to reach more people who are, moderate Democrats, for instance, and we're working on that. But we need some sort of more robust, honest, fair, unbiased, tenacious media environment, or nothing is going to get better here. Let me see here. Rick says, what do you think about Eastern Washington joining Idaho to make one state? I used to laugh at this notion. Now I'm like, sign me up. I used to make fun of people like this. And now I'm like, let's just do it. And people always say also the eastern half of Oregon, just sort of lump it all in and then make like Oregon and Washington, like the Portland area and Washington, one state. Honestly, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I don't make fun of that notion anymore, because it's also like, just think of the fact that there are people in Eastern Washington who are going to have to live with laws passed by a socialist in Olympia that Seattle just sent there. Like, that doesn't seem fair. That's just nuts. Let me see here. Michelle Bassford, not a question, just a vent. Okay, we can vent today. I was chatting with coworkers about Christmas movies and specifically Home Alone. Oh, I know where this is going. Someone mentioned that Trump has a cameo in the second Home Alone movie, and one coworker responded that he'll be skipping that movie because of it. Oh my God, really? TDS is nuts in Washington, so unhinged. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And also, that just shows like Donald Trump used to be absolutely celebrated and welcome in Hollywood, where like people thought it was so cool that Trump made that cameo where Macaulay Culkin's character is going through a hotel in New York. It's the second one, and he bumps into a guy and asks him for directions, and it turns around and it's Donald Trump. And people used to love that. I mean, Trump used to be even. We talked about it this week on Morning Joe. Trump was friends with Joe. He used to be on Morning Joe when he first got elected, and they had a great relationship. But then it's like, as this system worked to vilify him, they're like, oh, now we have to fall in line. Now we have to fall in line and vilify him. And I mean, you see it in so many things. Any celebrities who have dared to speak out or even like suggest or hint at being conservative or supporting Trump, blacklisted, just like that. And we've seen some entities willing to sort of and successfully so push back and try to make inroads again into popular culture, like Matt Walsh with the Daily Wire. I mean, his latest documentary, the Am I Racist documentary, like that was in some theaters and it did very, very well. And so stuff like that is really important. And who's the Yellowstone character that just got that's no longer on the show anymore? Why can I not think of his name? He's like a famous celebrity, but he started making some conservative content, etc. And I think that's great. Let me see here. Kevin Grip with a $10 super chat. Power bill, LOL. I wish it was as simple as us just not having paid our power bill, because we make it right. Let me see. Roseanne, Brandi, do you find it strange that Insley and Fergie didn't chime in on national news to fight deportation here? Most other blue states are. I don't know that it's true that they didn't. I'll be honest, I haven't, if Ferguson might have said something that I missed, but I know that his very first press conference after he was the governor-elect was to talk about all the ways they're going to fight back against the Trump administration and like sue them to high heaven and spend time doing that. And so that is going to be the predominant thing that we're going to see. Maybe on abortion issues, I don't know what they'll cook up on that, but we're going to see Bob Ferguson, Nick Brown, Democrats try to go toe to toe with Donald Trump if he tries anything coming close to mass deportation. Because ideologically, they think that's a good battle for them, which is just stupid because look at the situation that we're in. We've got these migrants who are asylum seekers, which are they, who are just allowed to go into the interior of the country. And now they're in homeless encampments in city parks, being a drain on our resources when we already don't have like the law enforcement resources, the affordable housing resources, the shelter resources for the homeless population we already have that was already at crisis levels. So if they were smart, they would just let them do it. And they would say, okay, maybe not, coming in and going door to door in our state. I don't think they'll ever allow that, or I don't know if they have a choice, but they will never assist with it. But let him do what he needs to do at the southern border to keep more people from coming in. That's not the battle that they should be fighting because it's really detrimental to the state and all our resources. Let's see here. 15 trees down on our road. We have a generator, but no Wi-Fi. So hard to not get news. So sitting in the parking lot of our gym in Monroe. Oh, Vicky. Oh, I'm so grateful you're watching us from the parking lot of your gym. But yeah, that was my situation yesterday. We were having trouble even getting notice out to you guys that we couldn't do our show yesterday. I had to drive like 7 miles to be able to get a cell signal. It was just nuts. It was really isolating. I also want to say a big thank you to all of our listeners and viewers who either you or your family members are out working on the power lines. I think it was Anna, one of our ex-subscribers, said her husband was out wee hours of the night working on the power line. So a big thank you to that. I mean, that is tough work. And I also tend to see people act like be very understanding of the situation with the power companies. Like where we're at, we're not on PSE, but people were cheering them on, like even though it was like 2 days without power, weren't getting angry in the comments on social media. We're very appreciative. And so I love to see that because, there's only so much they can do in the moment. They're doing their best. Garrett Ayers, after the Washington election, what hope do you have that common sense will make a comeback in Washington state? Look, I think we saw what happened in California. California shifted double digits toward Donald Trump, and California is Washington state 2 years in the future. It is, when you look at how bad their crime crisis, homeless crisis, drug crisis, taxation, and all of those things has gotten. And now you see this revolt. I mean, even on the gas front. So there's a really interesting thread happening in California right now, where they have this low carbon fuel standard that is going to dramatically increase the cost of fuel there. And it's already usually the highest gas prices in the nation. Like, we go back and forth, like Hawaii, California, Washington. And people are revolting, and the media is actually doing its job down there, is going after the Newsom administration for not being more honest about it. I mean, we're talking like 70 cents a gallon, like that in California, it's going to go up. So to what point, like, that's going to happen here? And we, did our best to wake people up to the consequences of not repealing the Climate Commitment Act when we had a chance to do so. Because here, as the CCA continues every year that goes by with these carbon auctions, there are fewer and fewer credits available for auction, which means that the credits that are available to buy are going to be more and more expensive. And as they're more and more expensive, the companies that buy them aren't absorbing that cost. They're passing it along to you. So every year that the CCA remains in effect is a year that our gas prices are going to get significantly higher. The same down in California. They have a carbon market. They also have a low carbon fuel standard, but they're honest down there. They're at least honest down there. It's a point that Todd Myers made on our show last week with the Washington Policy Center. They came out and they said, here's exactly what we expect gas prices to increase by. And that is a courtesy that our state leaders did not give us. I said from the very beginning, had JN out and said, look, we're going to try to push the Climate Commitment Act. Yes, it will increase gas prices. I'm sorry for that, but this is the price we pay for a clean energy future. I would have still disagreed with the policy on its face, because it doesn't do anything for the environment. It just makes people rich and makes them feel good, people in the climate sector rich. But at least I would have said, well, at least he was honest. At least families can prepare for a story I saw out of California was $1,000 extra net a year that people down there will have to bring in just to maintain their same level of fuel consumption. So that's something you have to plan for, right? For a working class family, I know politicians don't understand this, but for a working class family, $1,000 extra a year, just like that, is something you have to plan for. So at least in California, they've told them, the government and the media, this is what's going to happen. This is how much it's going to cost you. In Washington State, Jay Inslee never gave us that courtesy. Bob Ferguson never gave us that courtesy. The Senator Marco Leas never gave us that courtesy. No one who supported the CCA, they just lied to us. Not only did they hide it, they lied to us. And so it's going to continue to get worse. So yes, I do believe that we are going to continue to make progress. It's going to be slow. It's frustrating. But what other alternative do we have? Do we just give up and hand things back to old media and not try to keep pushing back and waking people up? Like, no, let's hope that we can go the way of California, that maybe we're just a little bit behind in coming to that realization. Let me see here. Daniel's Circus Adventures. Does Mayor Herold actually intend to improve things in Seattle, or is he just a localized version of Jay Inslee? I think Mayor Bruce Herold, I've come to the realization, and you'll remember, I was very, I celebrated when he won because the alternative would have been so bad. I gave him every benefit of the doubt. But I've realized he's a talker, not a doer. He really likes being mayor. He really likes talking about doing things, talking about being mayor, and he is not getting anything done. So I would love for someone to step up to the plate who is willing to make tough decisions, do tough things, regardless of who's going to yell at them on any given day. Let me see here. Bill Biz, $20 super chat. Thank you, Bill. In 1979, Jimmy Carter established the Department of Education cabinet level, fulfilling a campaign pledge to the nation's largest teachers union, the NEA. Need I say more? So that was in response to our subscriber poll of the day. I did put one of those out this morning because I was just like, we got to get back to our routine here. This is ridiculous. And I asked subscribers on Patreon, Locals, and X this morning, do you believe Donald Trump should abolish the U.S. Department of Education? On Patreon right now, 77% saying yes. So go take that poll on Patreon, Locals, or X if you're a subscriber, and I'll read some of those comments toward the end of our live stream today. Let me see. Greg, H. Insley is suing to invalidate the initiative. I don't think personally, but Governor Inslee came out after it became clear that the initiative to prohibit banning natural gas would be the only one that would be successful. And he said that he's going to sue because he thinks it violates the constitutional provision where initiatives can't be multi-subject. And so I don't think Insley, because he's going to be out of office, is suing. But I do believe that there are lawsuits a brewing over that, which is just another way to undermine the will of voters. Democrats can do it all day long, but it's Republicans who are the true threat to democracy. Give me a fucking break. All right. Give me a, it's fine. It's fine. I'm over it. Over the swear jar. Greg P., how can we draw more independents and common sense Democrats to subscribe to Undivided? So to get more discussion and ideas how to move forward in our state. Then use this as a platform for groups like Let's Go Washington to promote a new partisan platform. We probably wouldn't like try to be a platform for other people, but what I would say is it's just about spreading the word and about trying to bring in I talk to Democrats all the time who are like, oh, love what you're doing. So we definitely do have Democrats within our audience. But there is this issue of the people who need to hear the message the most might be tuned into other things like the Seattle Times or King 5 News. And so the question is how to reach them. I mean, we've never really done any significant marketing efforts for Undivided. That will change this year. We're going to start to do some of that and just start to continue to look at where do we go from here and how do we grow. We went from 1 half-hour show a week. We now do 5 shows a week, 4 for the public, 1 for subscribers. One thing we're looking at in the new year is bringing in other voices. So be it, via editorials, for instance, to get some more perspectives in under the brand. So that's something that I think could be helpful as well. Okay. CH Bedient. This might have been addressed already, but will anything happen with Ferguson forcefully asking Hobbs to change the order on the ballot? That's a good question. So we intend to follow up because remember what happened? State Senator Mark Mullet, who was running for governor, filed a complaint with the Bar Association against Bob Ferguson for blatantly asking the Secretary of State to violate election law. The Bar Association came back and said, we're going to decline to investigate this until after the election because we don't want to be perceived as like interfering in the election in some way. So the question is, does Mark Mullet have to be the one to re-up that with the Bar Association? If he does, I don't think he will. I believe that Mark Mullet got named to Bob Ferguson's transition team, which I'm happy about. Like, I'm glad that, there's some sanity there. I think that was an okay thing for Bob Ferguson to do, but I don't think Bob Ferguson did that out of the goodness of his heart. I think he probably did it because he wants to make sure that Mark Mullet isn't out there calling balls and strikes, and maybe he's expecting some sort of obedience from Mark Mullet, or that he wouldn't re-up the Bar Association investigation. Who knows? So we're going to check in with the Bar Association and see who it is that would have to actually get the ball rolling on that again. I mean, it wouldn't preclude someone else from filing a new one, right? Like if Mark Mullet would have to be the one to carry it across the finish line and he doesn't have the appetite to do that anymore, doesn't stop maybe one of us from doing it. And I don't expect anything to come of it, by the way, because the Bar Association are just all his buddies. Let me see here. Delaney, at this point, it genuinely blows my mind that over half of the state can look at what our state has turned into the last 12 years, especially, and want to continue that. How? I can't grasp that. I can't either. But again, it comes down to the media. 100%, it comes down to the media. The media in this state is the biggest roadblock to holding the party in power accountable. Think about that. Think about that. The media, whose job it literally is in the United States of America to hold powerful people accountable in the state, the biggest roadblock to actually doing that. That's insane. And that's not hyperbole. That I used to belong to the mainstream media for 10 years. And I saw it increasingly and increasingly so. I mean, I was vilified in the mainstream media left and right for like being too hard on Democrats and, oh, she must be a Republican or whatever it is. It's like, no, they were the ones in power, and that's what I perceived my job to be. And I had management at one point that was very supportive of me doing that job. And that changed. And that's one of the many reasons why I decided to leave, is not liking new management. So yeah, we have to have an overhaul of the local media. I mean, look at what happened down in LA with the Los Angeles Times. And I get it that the owner there is different ideologically than the Blethens of the Seattle Times, but the LA Times said it's overhauling its editorial board. all new editorial board that better reflects people. Because think about it, like in Washington State, what did Donald Trump end up with? Like 38 or 39% of the vote. And in King County, it was less. It was like 22% of the vote. But still, I think the ed board has 6 or 7 members. You're telling me you can't have one conservative or one Trump supporter, one on the editorial board, or a number of Trump supporters or conservatives that aligns with the makeup of the county. Like, yeah, you're going to have more liberals. I get it. But you can't have at least one, like throw them a freaking bone. Occasionally the Seattle Times will, the Seattle Times, when I first left Fox 13, they published a couple of my op-eds, but that was before I was totally red-pilled and then was criticizing them. And they're like, well, we're not going to publish op-eds from someone who's critical of us, which is another issue. But, they'll occasionally publish, like, I think it's just to throw conservatives a bone, like a Republican op-ed. But it'll only be the Republicans who are like allowed, like a Chris Vance, who's not even a Republican anymore, which is fine, but he's an independent. But it's like only the super, super, like, are they Republicans? I don't like the phrase rhino, but like people who aren't conservative by any measure, and they'll call it good. So it's just really absurd stuff. The media has to change or nothing is going to change, because no one else is going to open up the eyes of low information voters to Nicole always says this on the show, no one's connecting the dots. Like, they see these things, but in their mind, they're not politically driven. So they don't automatically go to politicians are the problem. They go to like societal issues or chalk it up to societal woes, but they don't immediately go like, oh, the party in power, right? So you have to think like they might think. And again, low information voter isn't a stupid voter. It's a voter who's not soaking in politics to the extent that we are. So we're connecting dots in a way that they're just not connecting dots. It's the media's job to make them do that. And that's not bias on the part of the media. It's the media's job to quite literally hold powerful people accountable. So they should be holding them accountable for the homelessness failures, for the crime, substance abuse failures, for the fact that it's more expensive to live here than it ever has been. And Democrats act like that's not their fault. It's wild stuff. So without the media, nothing will change. Ollie Rohde says, we are selling our house in 2025. Do you think the D's will extend the capital gains tax to primary residences in the upcoming session? If yes, would it most likely have an emergency clause to prevent a referendum, or do you think it will take effect in July of 2025 as usual? Oh God. Okay. That's a really, really good question. I think it's a possibility. I know for a fact a Democrat will try to reduce the threshold for the capital gains tax because they feel emboldened, since it was the initiative to repeal it was defeated so soundly. So they feel like they have a mandate from the voters to keep it. And then remember, now all of a sudden we're facing a $10 to $12 billion budget deficit. Thanks, Jay Insley. He's going to saddle us with that when he walks out the door. So they're dealing with that. You really think they're going to cut their precious programs? No, they're going to look for a new form of tax revenue. And it's not popular to pass new taxes, but to alter an existing tax that the voters just said, yeah, let's keep that, because they were, the ballot language was intentionally confusing. That is the most likely means to do that, is to reduce the threshold for who pays a capital gains tax. Now, I don't know if they change it that much the first time around, where it's like, we're going to reduce the threshold. So it's not, you're making just for people who make $250,000 in the sale of stocks and bonds and other assets, but people who make $15,000, which they've tried to do that before. If they try that, see how that goes, and then have it take out the exemption for property. But I would say, to the other point, so it's a possibility they do it this session. To your other point, will they make it an emergency? Because if they attach an emergency clause to it, we're not allowed to run a referendum on it. So they've been abusing the emergency clause on things that they know will be unpopular, so that you don't come in there and run a referendum, which is easier than running an initiative. And the answer is yes. If they do that this year, they will absolutely pass an emergency clause, attach an emergency clause to it, without a doubt. So that is something to think about if you're pondering selling your home. Now, whether they'd institute, one of the other things I'll just note is whether they'd institute it right away. If it's something like property, I'm not sure, because sometimes what they'll do is they'll still put an emergency clause on it and they'll have it start immediately, but then the program phases in because they actually need some time to set up the bureaucracy involved with taking that much money from people. So you might be okay in 2025, but it's something that I would continue to monitor. And obviously, we're going to be talking about it on the show nonstop. All right, Sassy D. Brandi, do you have anyone you like covering Oregon politics? Yeah, there's a couple accounts I follow, but I can't think of their names off the top of my head. Yeah, I would waste precious time looking up their names because they're just like little screen names. So I don't know what their actual names are. So let me get back to you on that. I'll take a note. Nicole, if you want to save that comment somewhere for me so I can find it again. Sergeant Pickles, $4.99 super chat. I bet they still want to ban natural gas even after this week. Hope the Supreme Court can overrule some of the insanity before it's too late. Well, they won't be able to ban natural gas unless the initiative is nullified. I'm sure they still want to find a way to do it, and they're sneaky little devils. So Lord only knows what they'll cook up. Debbie, why are carbon credits bid on? Why aren't they sold only to those who use them? Do I understand that they are used as an investment by some, like playing the stock market? Yeah, you have speculators who come in and buy them, and then they resell them on the marketplace. So why they allow people to do that, I guess I'm not so sure. I mean, the state loves when the money, the auctions go high, because that's more money for them, right? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to why they allow speculators to buy up carbon credits and not just quote unquote polluters who actually need those carbon credits to be able to operate their businesses. Great questions today, guys. You guys are so freaking plugged in. I love it. Jason Crump, can the state be sued on the other three initiatives? The one we lost? No, I don't think so. Because what would you sue like? For a redo? You could run the initiatives again, which might be a possibility, although I don't know if anything would turn out different if they're still going to play the same game that they played this time around. David says, howdy, I got a job interview on Monday, a deaf job. If hired in January, I'll not be able to join live anymore as I'll be working during lunchtimes too. If not hired, I'm honored to have gotten this far. Well, that's awesome. You said a deaf job? I'm curious what you mean by that. Deaf job, or did you mean different job? Charles, how do the people sue over the hack job the AG did on the initiatives, making them confusing on the ballot? Well, there was already a lawsuit over that. I don't know if it's been finalized yet, but Jim Walsh already filed a lawsuit over the addendum to the initiatives that basically said, vote against this or else. I'm not sure what the status of that is, but it wasn't successful enough to, the judge did not allow the judge allowed that new language to go on the ballot. So at least that phase of the lawsuit wasn't successful. Patsy says, what a pretty pup you have, Brandi. Thanks. Look, so cute. She wants to do something. Do you see those sad puppy eyes she's giving me? I love you. She's so mad. She's like, take me somewhere. What do you think about David Postman as chief of staff at the AGO? Chief of staff for Nick Brown? I haven't seen that yet. David Postman's a nice guy. He used to work for Governor Insley. He was always kind to me, seemed fairly reasonable. And so I wouldn't have an issue with that. And that would kind of who Nick Brown might bring along. Crafty Grandma Crispy, whatever happened to the committee that was formed to study how to spend the massive amount brought in by the CCA initially? That's a good question. Because Lord knows they have more money than they can ever spend. I mean, obviously, there's been some of that money doled out to like electric ferries, to bus lanes, to free bus tickets for kids, et cetera, et cetera. Tyrone Wilson, isn't coal illegal in Washington state? Well, I know that our last remaining coal burning factory was phased out. I don't think it burns any coal anymore. I think the phase out was for January 1st, had to be fully phased out by January 1st of 2025, but I think it's already fully phased out. Let's see. Matthew Cook. Hi, Brandi. Isn't Mia Gregerson's homeless protected class bill illegal because of the recent SCOTUS ruling? Could cities file suit? Yeah, so Mia Gregerson, if you didn't watch our Tuesday show, I mean, this would be like the end of Washington state as we know it, or else it would, get us to California levels so we could start to kind of fix things. Mia Gregerson's very likely to introduce a bill that would make homeless people a protected class, that would say you can't, harass or move them or the ban. So yeah, it would seem that would fly in face of the state or the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in the Oregon case that said that, cities can have these bans in place, like to ban camping in public spaces. So it would seem that if we were to pass a bill like that, that it would obviously lead to another prolonged legal battle of sorts. But yes, I think those two things would absolutely be in conflict with one another. Let me see. I'm just checking on a couple other sites right now. Lisa says, have you bias podcast by Jordan Is My Lawyer? If so, what are your thoughts? I have not. In fact, I've never even heard of that before. What is it about? Let me know. I'm always for a good new podcast. Y says, beautiful home. Thank you for doing this. I missed you yesterday. Oh, I missed you guys too. And thank you. This was the renovation I did when I moved in with my sweet boyfriend. And I was like, hey, can we renovate your house? And he said, yes. Isn't that nice? Let me see here. Gene Johnson, what do you think of next year's King County executive race? Often that's a stepping stone to Washington governor. I agree. And so in that sense, I'm very worried about some of the people who have already entered the race. I'll say it right here on the record. I really want Mark Mullet to run for King County executive. I think that makes a lot of sense. He would have been a much better governor than Bob Ferguson, and I think he could actually win. I mean, the last King County executive race, which was Dow Constantine against Joe Wynn. Remember the scandal? Because Joe Wynn, a progressive Democrat, had the audacity to challenge Dow Constantine, a sitting Democrat. But he's like, I don't care, because I like Joe Wynn for that. He doesn't really care about party allegiances. He's super far to the left, but I like him. And he ended up losing, pretty significantly. And I think that shows that King County, if faced with two Democrats, they're going to pick the more moderate Democrat. So if you have someone like Gurmai Zahalai, who's a King County council member who's going to run, he's saying he's interested in looking into it, which means he's going to run. And if he's, the progressive candidate and Mark Mullet were the more moderate candidate, I think it would be a no-brainer for Mark Mullet. I also know Wilson's in the race. I think the longtime King County assessor, really smart guy. I met him the other day at an event. So there's a lot of options in there. Claudia Balducci. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else off the radar who would be like eyeing it as a stepping stone. Like maybe an Ann Davison, the Seattle city attorney, I could see. So there's a lot still out there. There's a lot of potential candidates. I don't think Mark wants to do it, but I really think Mark Mullet should. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, Ann Davison, I don't know if that's the best position for her. I kind of like her where she's at, but it's still coming into focus. But certainly if you're the King County executive, that is absolutely a stepping stone to be the next governor. So it's a race we're going to be keeping our eye on. And we're also going to be keeping our eye on where Dow Constantine goes, because it's very likely that Dow Constantine, after utterly ruining King County for 16 years, will fail up to a much cushier, much better paying job. And that will just piss me right off. All right. Krista, thoughts on the racketeering investigation drama around Ferguson? Yeah, we haven't really talked a lot about this on the show. So essentially there's this case going on, and I'm not fully versed on it, but I know vaguely had to do with a contract awarded and the NWSU Ferguson, and a contract awarded that it was done in a way that was untoward. And so, yeah, I mean, any investigations around Fergie, I don't have a lot of hope in. But if Trump can give us a strong United States attorney who is willing to investigate fraud, abuse, Antifa, whatever it is, I think things could get real spicy in our state real fast. So that's what we need from Donald Trump. An absolute fighter. Krista, we'll look into more of the status of that investigation of racketeering. Nicole, if you want to note that too. It's something we could talk about on the show next week in terms of where that investigation's at. But I'm really hopeful. I don't know. I've heard a few names floated around for U.S. attorney, but we need someone who will absolutely investigate the abuse and misuse of federal tax dollars flowing into Washington state, because that would be the purview of the United States attorney. Unfortunately, they wouldn't have the purview to investigate the abuse of our in-state tax dollars going to the state. But federal tax dollars, hell yeah. And then Antifa, build a case around Antifa, just like you built a case around the Jan 6ers and went around the country rounding them up. Come on, man. We need to put these people in federal prison for hard time. Let me see. Marla Thomas. Hi, Brandi. Who wrote the initiatives information on the ballot and in the voters pamphlet? I've heard the AG wrote them, and I've heard sponsors of the initiatives wrote them. Can you clarify who actually wrote the information? Thank you. Yes. This is something that I needed clarity on as well. So when Governor Inslee says he's going to sue over the initiative to keep natural gas, because he says the way it was written is unconstitutional, he's referring to the language of the initiative. The actual, because remember, they have to write a law, right? Because that is the law that would then go into effect. So the actual language of the law that the initiative sponsors wrote. So like the Jim Walsh, Let's Go Washington, maybe BIAW as well. So that's what he's saying is unconstitutional. Now, the excerpts that were actually on the ballot, that is something approved by the Attorney General's office. That's not what Inslee is saying he's suing over. So you see the difference there. So they don't, one of the issues in the state is they don't review the initiative language for constitutionality before it goes to the ballot. So they don't do that, which means that we could go through this whole process and have, this has happened before, like with car tabs and stuff, where they get the signatures, it gets approved, they put it on the ballot, voters vote, and then they're like, well, that thing you were voting on was written in an unconstitutional manner. So what a waste of time that was, which is kind of crazy, right? That they don't say, hey, you have to write this in a constitutional way or you can't collect signatures on it. Because then it saves all that time and money. But maybe they do that on purpose, honestly, because the only people running initiatives are going to be conservatives or Republicans who aren't happy with the bills being pushed in Olympia. And so maybe they're like, yeah, let them just screw themselves over and write a bad initiative. And were written poorly. I mean, it's possible that Governor Inslee's a moron and doesn't know what he's talking about. That's quite possible. Let me see here. Mama Pillow. Is that like my pillow? Question, Brandi, have you seen this study on the incredible rise in heart attacks in King County? From Nicole, ask her to send to us. Yeah. I was reading a note from Nicole. No, so send it to us, Mama Pillow. I'd love to see it because that would be concerning, but we've seen a lot of heart-related issues across the country, haven't we? So would like to hear that. Let me see here. Greg says, I'm trying to send a question and it's being blocked. Does it have a curse word in it? Does it have a sexual word in it? I don't know why it would be blocked. You can't send more than one message if you're on YouTube, I think every 60 seconds to stop the spammers. So if you're trying to send it and you sent a question less than 60 seconds ago, I would wait for that. Let me see here. This American Mutt. Earlier you said how your sister didn't understand how people can't connect. Here's my answer. What are you talking about? Okay, this is why I wait for Nicole to put questions in the chat for me, because when I read them cold, they don't make any sense. Let's see here. Sorry, I've got to upload. Nicole's working to put more questions in the chat. Let me see. Nicole, you got any more for me on there? Not questions. Let me see. Okay, I don't know if we have any more. Hold on. Nicole's getting some more in there for me. She's typing them in. She's like drying up over here. Come on, Nicole. Anna, do you think the legal bar will look into Bob Ferguson after they dismiss the Mark Mullet case? I don't know if they dismissed the Mark Mullet case. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I don't know if it's dismissed. They just pushed it off. So the question we were saying earlier is someone going to re-up it so we can actually have an investigation by the bar? That would be bad. That would be good. I don't know who would do it though. So we're going to check in on it. H, we need to band together and write Trump about how corrupt our state is and Ferguson in order to get a good United States attorney. Yeah, I agree. Somebody who has the ear of the president's team needs to say, you have to send us help in Washington state. You have to send us help to get a U.S. attorney who will fight back against the corruption that's happening and the abuse of taxpayer funds. Let me see here. Robert Parker, Christmas tree already. Come on. Hey, my sweet husband, he was home the other day. He had a day off from work. I had bought the Christmas tree. I was super excited about it because we usually have a real one and I just wanted a fake one so it was easier. And I came home and that sweet man had it set up for me, even though we thought it was way too early to have a tree. But you'll notice we haven't put any decorations on it yet. So, I'm still sort of Thanksgiving-y. But I put a little Christmas decor on the stairwell. But let me see here. Sassy D, thinking of my neighbors suffering from the massive storm. Does anyone know what's being done to help people? I don't know. I mean, I saw a couple of the entities like PSC and the other electric companies like putting out information for warming shelters and stuff. One of the things that went out today, and I should really read it for you guys, is that the King County Regional Homelessness Authority had like no plan to help homeless people with the windstorm. So they literally put out, I mean, these people have spent billions of dollars. They're supposed to have all these like shelter options and all of this. They literally just put out this things that was a tips for staying safe in high winds. Tips for staying safe in high winds, like if you're homeless. And it was like, if you're staying outside, tie down tents and canopies with additional lines and strong pegs or anchors, especially on the side the wind is coming from. Like, think about this. If you can move your camp downward of a large object like a building without causing an obstruction, do so. Avoid areas with power lines, large overhanging tree branches, or dead trees. Avoid low-lying areas like tidal zones. So it's not like, hey, get inside, we'll help you get inside and let's get all these homeless people off the streets. We have enough spaces and empty buildings where we should be able to put something together really quick. No, it's like throw an extra stake in your tent and good luck. I mean, that's insane. That is an insane level of incompetence. Like you're telling me you can't get creative enough to say, hey, we've got empty buildings here, there. Like, go out, officers, get all these homeless people off the street. Let's get them in this building, even if they just set up their tent inside a building and wait out the storm. It's like, no, just tie your tent down. It's absolutely worthless. Let me see here. Charlie K, as far as being in the hole, remember Rakedahl is asking for more money to do more of nothing for our schools. There's a lot of people asking for more money, and they're not going to get it. Like Rakedahl is saying, remember he said a couple $1 billion is what the state would need so our education system didn't suck so bad. And it's like, okay, I saw a chart the other day. It was like funding for education was going way, way, way up, and educational outcomes were going down. So if I look at that, how am I to believe that you'll do better if only we give you more money? Because we've given you a ton more money and educational outcomes are worse. Oh, but if you give me $2 billion more and my buddies with the Washington Education Association, then we'll get those test scores up. Like, that's just absolute utter bullshit. Let's see here. Yeah, so I don't see him getting that ask unless they say, could be again part of this big plan. Could be part of the big plan where they're like, oh, we need money for education. Test scores are really bad, so we'll have to approve a change to the capital gains tax. So it could be all just setting us up for more taxes or different taxes. Okay, let me see here. Matt says, it's Kruse family tradition to keep the Christmas tree up for the whole year. Yeah, if you guys watch the show, you've heard this story before. My mother, when we were kids, I think she just genuinely hated taking the Christmas tree down. So one year she decided it was going to stay up all year long, and she decorated it for different holidays. She like put hearts on it for Valentine's Day. She put like 4-leaf clovers or whatever it is for freak is the holiday with a leprechaun. She put like back to school supplies in it for back to school and would have like a party with the kids in the neighborhood. Like, that's what and for a couple years, she just didn't want to take the thing down. So it just became like an indoor fake plant, which is interesting. Let me see. Susie, any thoughts on the number of execs stepping down from the incoming Ferguson possible cabinet? Not unusual for change, but office leaders stepping down seems unusual. So the Insley administration had done sort of a survey of, not only its leadership, but others to ask how many would be interested in staying in on the new administration. And I think like they expected like a 70% turnover. But when it comes to the cabinet positions, a new governor, especially after 12 years of the same governor, one of the biggest parts about being governor is you get to appoint the heads of all these agencies. So Bob Ferguson, he's going to want to do that. He's not going to want to just take Inslee's leftovers, so to speak. That's going to be a big part of what, and I don't blame him. If I were the incoming governor, even if I agreed with the governor and these appointments myself as well. Now, if you have someone who's incredibly competent, who's doing a great job, then you should want to keep them, right? But, he's going to want to have a new state patrol chief. He's going to want to have a new head of the Department of Corrections so he can own, his sort of policies and ideas because these are his people. Let me see here. Krista, we have a hanging skeleton by our front door that we do the same with. His name is Bob, and the kids in the neighborhood love having a real seafair pirate around. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. St. Patrick's Day. Diana Manning said, I was thinking of St. Patrick's Day. I'm sorry. I'm having like a little brain issue. Let me see here. Sassy says, love Nicole. We got to support her. She's going to try to take on Callie. I'm going to listen to the show. Thanks for letting me know. Nicole's going to take on Callie, or are you talking about somebody else? I think you might be talking about a different Nicole, but we love our Nicole too. Let me see here. Robert Parker, $5 super chat. Thoughts on the 5th appeals court ruling regarding ballots postmarked are not received on election day. Seems it will change our state as well. I'm not 100% familiar with if they just ruled in the last day or so with that. So, Robert, I'm going to have to go look into that. Is that the Pennsylvania one? Is that what's happening in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, with ballots that aren't postmarked? But if it's in the 5th Court of Appeals, that doesn't automatically apply to us in this part of the country. So there'd have to be like a U.S. Supreme Court ruling for it to be precedent for us. Let me see here. Greg Anderson, wondering why the fact that Germany's government collapsed when they finally recognized that green policy is not obtainable, nor is it sustainable. Volkswagen is teetering on bankruptcy after 90 years of manufacturing cars, but no one is covering it anywhere. I don't know. We're not really covering that anywhere either, but anything related to climate policy is of interest to me. So that's something we'll look into because we see how the climate policy is just an absolute grift here, just used to enrich people. Governor Insley flies halfway across the world to tell people that we're miscreants for wanting to keep natural gas. Like, who has one question I'd love to ask Jay Insley, or to have, I'm sure there'll be a TV reporter who'll do a sit down exit interview with the governor about his legacy. And I'd love for him to just be asked, do you believe that you have a bigger carbon footprint than the average Washingtonian? That's what I would like for him to be asked. Do you believe, Governor, that you have a bigger carbon footprint than the average Washingtonian? Because the answer is obviously has to be yes. I mean, he'll say, oh, there's no way to answer that. The answer is obviously yes. He jet sets all across the world. And the truth is, yes, he has a bigger carbon footprint than the average Washingtonian. Not to mention he lives in a big-ass house, and he has 2 big-ass houses. One, our house, the mansion in Olympia, and then one on Bainbridge Island. And then he gets driven around everywhere he goes by black SUVs. And he'll fly all over the state to do his job, and he'll fly all over the planet to talk about the climate. So that's all I want. Whoever is going to do that last exit interview with Insley, that's what I want to ask you. Do you believe that you have a bigger carbon footprint than the average Washingtonian who you are imposing all of these climate policies on? I mean, the answer is obvious. Whether he'll be honest about it, very good question. Sassy D was talking about Nicole Shanahan, but our Nicole's great too. And then I was like, it said something about she's going to save California. I'm like, is Nicole leaving me? I hadn't heard that. Let me see. Sick of Washington says, I wrote to the office of Donald J. Trump. Not sure if it will work, but it made me feel better. Hey, there is no downside to writing and tagging people on X like Elon and just others, Vivek in the Trump administration, saying, send us a fighter to Washington State. Send us a fighter to be the next United States attorney. Let me see. Chad, how can we get all political ads in this state to be 100% truthful? You won't. You never will. And here's the challenge with that, right? Who gets to regulate the truth? Who gets to decide what's truthful and what's not truthful? So I don't want the government to do that because I don't think the government will apply that well or fairly, right? Now, the media's job, in theory, should be to, even if it can't make the ad truthful or say, no, you can't air the ad, to hold them accountable for lies within the ad. That's supposed to be the job of the media. The issue is the media is not doing that job. Media, truly. Am I choppy? I feel like I look choppy, but nobody said anything to me. So sorry if I am choppy. I think our service still isn't great out here, although at least we have it now. Nicole Thompson says, I'd never leave for California, Texas, or Florida, maybe. Yeah, that's true. Nicole. Hey, am I back now? I think I came back. Did I just figure out how to come back on my very own? All right. Yeah, thanks, guys. I thought I was looking a little bit choppy. Okay, good. Oh, I missed you guys for just that one little second. All right, we're kind of winding down on the questions we have. A couple things I'll just say about upcoming shows. We're still figuring out Sunday, and just the reality is that our whole system is down, and so doing a show at the studio, even if we had some sort of generator, would just be nothing's working there. I mean, I went to the studio the other day. We didn't even have cell service or internet or anything like that. So we're going to figure out what the Sunday show is going to look like. We've been told right now that our studio isn't going to be back up until 8:20 or 11:23 at 8 p.m. So hopefully it happens sooner than that, and we'll keep you guys updated. I have an op-ed I'm dropping tonight. Lori says, Brandi, I know you've said no before to a position at the White House, but would Nicole take a job there if offered a national media spot? Could Brandi Kruse? Why are you guys trying to get rid of Nicole? Why are you trying to help Nicole go somewhere else? No, Nicole's not allowed to go anywhere else. Not allowed. Absolutely not allowed. And no, I don't think I'd take a job at the White House. I enjoy what I'm doing way too much, nor would anybody offer me a job at the White House that I know of. Let me see. My Cup of Tea 101. Any advice for individuals who would like to do their own reporting on the news? Trying to shorten my OG question. Yeah, just get out there and do it. Look what Jonathan Cho does with just often a cell phone. Like going out there and doing things, being safe, right? But independent journalism, citizen journalism, look what Glenn Morgan does. Glenn Morgan's just a concerned citizen who does a really good job at bird dogging issues. Anyone can file a public disclosure request. Anyone can reach out to a public agency to ask for information. So the more people that do that, the better. Let me see. Brandi for White House press secretary. I would have a good time doing that. I'm not going to lie. That would be a ton of fun, but I still wouldn't quit my job and move to Washington, D.C. to do it. So anyway, we are going to figure out what the deal is with the Sunday show for subscribers. I'll keep you guys up to date, and we'll push out some other content in lieu of our regular show. A lot of news going on, though. So, when we come back on the show on Monday, a lot to talk about with the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, with what's happening in the Trump admin and all of that. We'll obviously try to see, Kristen says, what are your thoughts about Trump's admin giving the education system back to the states? I like it in theory, but that means you're giving it back to our state, which is a train wreck. So I have a little, I meant to read that quick. Sorry, let me get to that quick before I let you guys go. In our daily subscriber show poll, I asked you guys, do you believe Donald Trump should abolish the U.S. Department of Education? Yes or no? A lot of you saying yes. Let me see. Linda says every state should oversee their own. E says, yes, I'm old enough to remember the education system before the feds were involved. As far as handing it back to the states and worrying about what Washington is going to do, people are already doing it and have been for decades. Brandon Ferris, I don't think abolishing it is the right thing. However, it needs to be greatly reformed, and any teachers that try to do more than teach the curriculum should be immediately removed from the classroom. I agree 100%. And by the way, if you haven't watched our documentary, Operation Indoctrination, you really should. It's available for free across all of our platforms. In fact, if you go to our YouTube channel or Patreon, it's pinned to the top of the page so you can watch it, because we're going to have some Operation Indoctrination follow-ups in the months ahead. So stay tuned to that. Robert Parr says, yes. However, in it are statutory requirements. Where do they go? So let's see the plan first. I know, not supposed to ask the government to plan or think. Kathleen says, I'm inclined to vote yes, because it sounds like sending education back to the states will promote more choice for those states who want it. But my fear is that Washington will be emboldened to double in the nonsense with no boundaries. Deb says, don't abolish it, but severely restrict it. Didn't Trump has nominated like the pro wrestling lady, Linda McMahon, right? To be the Department of Education. I swear he's just trolling the left at this point, which is sort of hilarious. So anyway, like I said, I was wrapping up, and then people were just starting all of a sudden to drop comments in. So we're gonna see what happens with the Sunday show. I'll keep you guys in the loop. Be on the lookout for a piece I'm posting tonight: 10 ways that Democrats in our state undermined democracy and got away with it. Really talks about the state of the media in Washington, how it contributed to the status quo remaining in place this election cycle, and how we all need to work to either fix it or unplug from old media entirely if we hope to save our state. So read that when it comes out. Share, share, share. I loved talking to you guys. I'm so sorry that we weren't at the studio. We're still offline, as are about 400,000 other people in PSE's service area. So I hope you guys are safe and warm and fed and all of those things, and that all the power comes back on quickly. So farewell to all of you. We will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.